This episode of Pool Magazine podcast is proudly sponsored by Current Systems. The award-winning Riverflow pump is the industry-recognized preferred solution for creating a variety of exciting swim environments. From lazy rivers to sports pools, from residential to commercial, you'll find a Riverflow pump at the heart of many of today's most noteworthy pool projects. To learn more, visit us on the web at current-systems.com.
Thanks for joining us on another episode of Pool Magazine Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Joe Trusty, editor of Pool Magazine. And today I have the unique privilege of chatting with Nick Buchholz, owner of Basin Pool Designs. When it comes to redefining what's possible in luxury pool designs, the folks at Basin have all eyes turning towards Tennessee all of a sudden. These guys are in a league all their own. It's a pleasure to have you with us today on the show, Nick.
Thanks for having me. Honored.
You know, I got to say, Jimmy Smith is a friend of mine. I follow all the jobs that he shoots. I've been following your work for a couple of years now, and it's clear that what you're doing at Basin Pool Designs is definitely some next level stuff. I mean, you guys aren't just building pools. You're one of the few firms out there that are creating like art installations that people can swim in.
Yeah, 100%. That's really kind of our culture here is, you know, we really just want to build something different and build something that really is timeless in these clients' backyards. That, you know, each one of them gives us the opportunity to kind of flex our muscles, both with how we build and if we're given the opportunity to design as well.
I love that ethos that you guys have beyond the ordinary, the art of outdoor living. I mean, it's clear that you guys aren't interested in doing cookie cutter pools or maintaining the status quo with the backyards that you guys do. You guys carving out a name as a highly selective, design-focused firm when it comes to pools and backyard amenities.
Yeah, that's right. You know, it's not that we are not the type that doesn't work hard to earn the business. I want to be clear about that. We work hard and don't want to have this like, hey, we're just so exclusive, we can't get to everyone kind of thing. But it's our job to kind of turn that client into a Basin Pools or Basin Pool Design client that really appreciates something unique and something that is like a project that they can really be proud to show off, and something when one of their friends leaves, they remember it.
Well, I've had the opportunity to look at a lot of your work, but can you give our listeners some background about your company and how you guys got started and what your mission is?
Yeah, so our mission really is relatively simple. I mean, we just want to execute excellent work through proper design and precision of construction. And we do that with guys that we've trained and other professionals that we rely on, whether it be other designers or engineers or architects. And, you know, everyone has, you know, those guys that we bring in are all kind of at the elevated level that we are. The story behind Basin is really simple. I mean, it was a reason for me to come back to Tennessee. I grew up here and I moved out to Phoenix in '02. Really, my goal was thought I was going to be a world-renowned chef, and I went to culinary school and went through that grind and realized after a few years that what I was working when everyone else was playing. And I had a friend that was designing pools and landscapes, and I really just was drawn to it. So I was fortunate enough to get to kind of talk someone into letting me design some projects for him and taught myself CAD. And then that was about the time that 3D modeling software was starting to come out. And so I was an early adopter of that. I can't hand draw at all. So it was kind of fortunate that came about. And so I worked for a few firms there in the Phoenix area over that period and went through the downturn in that economy and saw it built back up to kind of what, you know, the early stages of what it is now, which it's really wild there and it's really blowing up. So I was fortunate enough to work for some great companies. I worked for California Pools, which is, you know, I think in the past year been bought by Cody Pools, but worked for them and had a kind of a just epiphany one day that I wanted to move back to Tennessee. And luckily my wife was on board and we had a new child, and we decided to just pick things up and sell our own there and move back here. And it was, I never expected this market to start to be what it is. And we were just lucky enough to be here right at the beginning of what I think is just the start of Nashville and the surrounding areas, just the start of it really becoming an explosive in a big city, really.
Well, Nick, you mentioned that prior culinary experience. I mean, to me, your process reads almost like a Michelin-star rated kitchen, detailed, refined, obsessive. I mean, could you walk us through your process a bit? What's that like?
So, the way that I go about a project and when I meet with a client, I mean, obviously I'm trying to bring that passion and it's not very difficult to do. I sweat the small stuff and every little line to me matters and how you can bring a outdoor project indoors in inverse. So it's one kind of flowable project. You mentioned, Michelin star. And yeah, that is the process. I do think about it like I'm building a menu or building a new menu item. And it's kind of funny to think about it that way. And it's funny that you brought it up like that because it is very similar to that. We go through all of these projects and we're starting at the raw ingredients and trying to turn it into something that's spectacular. And, one of my mottos that I always had, and I actually picked it up from a Michelin star chef that I was fortunate enough to work for. And he always said, peasant food fit for a king. And that always kind of stuck with me. And, and that comes into what we build with. We don't have to use $50 a square foot material, $100 a square foot material to make it look excellent. I mean, some of this stuff, I'm not going to say it's low quality, but, Sukabumi, for instance, that you see on our, some of our projects, it's not $20 a square foot, and it makes a pool look dynamite. It's always kind of been the way that I build. It's efficiency and, really not cutting corners, but you don't have to take the highest level ingredient, but we are going to install it as if it were.
Sure. Sukabumi is a great go-to product. That's that Bali tile. But yeah, I mean, the recipe is always not going to be the same for each project. I mean, a lot of people in your market focused on production pools during the pandemic. I mean, you went the opposite route and decided to go after all the high-end work. I mean, is there a specific reason that you decided to focus on custom boutique builds versus, more of the volume pool construction stuff happening down there?
I'm not really interested in volume. I'm interested in the level of project that we're doing, executing high-end work. And I think that at a certain point, we started really, there was kind of a shift kind of right at the beginning of COVID, maybe a little earlier than that, where we were awarded some jobs that really were next level. Honestly, I couldn't have even imagined building some of these projects that we're building. I think we land jobs that are more difficult or are, more unique. Someone is looking for that next thing and they can tell, an educated client can tell if you're going to bring something to the table. And it's just really interesting to see what people are willing to accept. And I don't want to build the same pool twice. I feel like we did that so much in Arizona, where it's more of a turnkey kind of market. And not that people aren't, designers are great there and they're knocking out big work, but I don't know. I want every project to be unique and it just doesn't excite me to get up and build, a 20 by 40 rectangle in every backyard with a 3-foot banded cool deck.
Right, right. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, there's great designers doing great work in the Southwest. I mean, Kirk Bianchi is definitely one of those designers that stands out in my mind. But you're bringing that same kind of design aesthetic, that really polished look to your jobs where you are. I mean, from complex Lautner edges to like these really circular showpieces that double as works of art. These builds aren't just beautiful. I mean, they're really technically challenging to pull off. How'd you get your education in learning how to design and build? I mean, what were your influences whose work you admire or appreciate?
Gosh, well, you just mentioned one. I mean, to be in a conversation with Kirk Bianchi is an honor in and of itself. And, it's really funny. I had the opportunity to meet him this past weekend with Tributary being in Phoenix. And I didn't get to tell him this, and maybe he'll hear it on here, but I think I won a project over him when I was at California Pools. And this is 12, 13 years ago. And I've always had a sense of pride about that because he's such an iconic designer. Other guys I really love and look at is John Kay out in California, the work that he's doing. You got Randy Angel. I mean, you can't really deny that the work that they're putting out on the design side is just next level. And there's a few other guys out there, but it's, there's great designers all over the place too. But there are those kind of iconic designers that you can tell that they had a hand in that design. And I'm always inspired by those guys, but it doesn't have to always be pool designers that I get inspiration from too, And I forgot to mention, gosh, I've just been so fortunate to be around so many good designers here, being in Tributary and Genesis and Water Shapes. And, Jeremy Noggle is rocking out excellent work, and I really want to say that he was one of the guys that, in Genesis where I looked at and was like, oh man, he's doing just excellent, cool work. Dave Peterson, another one, and then you have Lorax Design in Kansas City. So there's all these guys that are in kind of this nucleus of pushing the envelope that I'm just so inspired by.
Sure. I mean, well, a lot of the names that you mentioned, we featured their work here at Pool Magazine. You're in the same vein of that conversation now. I mean, you see it right on your website. We don't build for everyone. That's a pretty bold statement, but I love it. What do you feel do you feel it's more important to vet your clientele, to find the perfect customer to work with? I'm sure you guys turn down your fair share of work in the selective screening process you have.
Look, I'm a boisterous person, and I'm very opinionated, and I'm very animated and passionate about what I do. And it's pretty easy for me to figure out if someone is going to be receptive to that. And if I notice that they are accepting of that passion and of my energy, then I know that I have the right client. One that is really not willing to compromise and understand that we're not here to compromise either. And once again, not everyone is going to do $1 million backyard, but if they understand the level of craftsmanship and vision and expertise and experience that we bring to the table, I really feel like they are then a Basin Pool Designs client.
Sure. Let's get to the fun part of this conversation. This is the part where I get to geek out with you over some of these awesome builds that you guys are doing. I mean, you've got 4 absolute showstoppers here. Each one's totally different. I wanted to bring up a couple of different pools here because I gave a presentation recently for Master Pools Guild about pool design trends and where this industry is going in terms of that. And I see a lot of the things that I was talking about in my presentation represented in some of the builds that you guys have been producing. So Nick, let's kick things off with this striking contemporary L-shaped pool. This is one with a raised spa and some fire features. I'd really like to get you to talk about that project a little bit.
Yeah, that was a project, and I was fortunate enough to be introduced by the general contractor for these folks in West Nashville. And the challenge that they had, which is very difficult to see unless you look at some of the pictures that are shot, towards the house over the fire pit, but they had a 15-foot grade challenge there. So, from that back porch where you see the barbecue and kind of that, barn dominium style look, and that was really just built for their barbecue. I mean, they actually put an insane amount of money into their barbecue space. The client was a competition barbecue guy. So that one to me was just really screaming for, having the pool up close to the house, which I really love to do. And, it's one of those that was just naturally, hey, let's do a vanishing edge here. And it's working around, hey, the client has bad knees and they want to have an elevated spa with a little sit and spin. And so we work on these finite kind of custom pieces. There's a rock aspect to it on the left side looking out there, and that's to hide the stairs that get down towards the lower seating area and grass and turf area. I always try to be really intentional about hiding certain things like that and making it kind of little discoveries around each corner, which that's really kind of inspiration there, I would never put myself in the league, but where you pick up little things from like, oh, Frank Lloyd Wright squeezes you down until he opens you up into a bigger space. So that for me, in addition to the design on there, that one had a full pier system and a couple hundred yards in retaining walls just to elevate that entire space. But overall, my goal is to make it look like it's supposed to be there and part of the architecture of the home.
Yeah, I loved it. I mean, Barndo is such a popular look right now. Having that kind of backyard, whether you have that look where it's more of like a contemporary meets geometric and modern. I mean, that one really showcases your ability to create vibrant social environments. But then you've also got projects that are more restrained, quiet, architectural, and yeah, deeply intentional. One that really stood out to me was this shallow modern pool that feels like more of an extension of the home itself. Can you tell us a little bit more about that build?
Yeah, that one Was actually early in my design career, probably year 2 or 3. I was so fortunate enough to work with a homeowner that she was just really a pure genius. She was an engineer and an architect, and her husband was an engineer, and they just really have an engineer architect, someone who's creative but also very restrictive. That one, I worked with her to come up with that project, and it was my first perimeter overflow. And I know the guys were doing that at that time, but that was really one of those where I designed it and sold it and had no idea how to build it. and it turned out excellent. That's at the foot of Camelback Mountain for anybody that can kind of see that project there. If you end up showing it, you see the monk right behind there. So that pool is 15, 16 years old, and it still is timeless, and it stands the test of time because it's intentional and it's meant to be right there.
Yeah, it feels like a real seamless connection between indoor and outdoor spaces. The way the materials play off one another, the lighting, the geometry. I mean, but tell me a little bit about your design approach there. How's the architecture kind of influence you in terms of pool design, and what kind of experience were you trying to convey there?
I think that one was so intimate to the inside of the house. If you can see how that's kind of tucked in
Yeah.
that little niche there with glass, that was a living space and shower actually right there and part of the master wing. And to me, I wanted to be able to see water from every position in the house. And I think you'll find that is really what my designs will lead you to, is being able to experience that pool and see water, whether, and I really like still water. I just think it's so calming. And that's what really inspires me to, keep things kind of clean and probably a little bit more simple, even though, they have some of these high end details that are very difficult to pull off.
Sure. That project really showcases your sensitivity to the home and landscape. But on the other end of the spectrum, there's a pool that's all about technical execution that I really like. You got the 66-foot Lautner Edge pool that you guys did in Brentwood. That's not just a showpiece, that's like engineering at a higher level. Can you take us behind the scenes on that project?
Oh my gosh, that was very difficult to pull off. And we actually shot that pool and laid it out before anything was done to the home at all. And we had very bad soil. We had 80-foot grouted helical piers that went in, I think, every 4 foot. And we tied our basin into that actually and had quite a bit of flowable fill. So probably had that laid out and surveyed 4 or 5 times, because what's very difficult for anyone to see in the pictures there is the elevation of that pool was about 6 or 7 foot above what the grade was at the time. So you had to kind of build this thing upside down. And not only did we have that, then we have a Lautner edge, negative vanishing edge on one side and Lautner edge on the other side. So fortunately, I surround myself with really smart people, and I worked with Benjamin Lassiter on that one to come up with the details of how to pull off that Lautner edge. And that was my first Lautner edge, and it is pretty right on the money and spot on. And I think I would have liked that water to come up another eighth of an inch, but that's just how it goes sometimes. But overall, that one really means a lot to me. And really, that one, I'll say, was designed not to be a Lautner edge, but just the space was designed by an architect around that, that designed the home. Really a next level architect named Marcus DiPietro here in Nashville. And I've got the world of respect for him. He's just very intentional and thoughtful, and, does one home every year or two. And they're just this level of detail. And it was me bringing it to the table saying, hey, you are on, top of one of the tallest hills in Brentwood. You've got to do still water. You've got to, let's do a Lautner edge. And luckily at the time, the clients believed in me and believed in my education and my experience to be able to pull it off. Shooting that pool was, as far as the pictures of it too, was really fun. And that was, Jimmy Smith really, that was an iconic picture that I think has been on that's still on Pebble Tech's website. And it was cool to kind of, that iconic shot, Jimmy was started teaching me about photography there too, it was just kind of really an epic experience all, from the beginning to the end.
Oh, Jimmy always gets the money shot when it comes terms of capturing what's going to appeal to people. I mean, that's why I put a lot of his work on the cover of our stuff. Ben Lassiter over at Design Ecology, definitely a great one to tap. Clear, you got good resources over there. You do so many pools, each one's different. One is made for entertaining, one's for architecture, one's got a heavy emphasis on engineering. But the project that we're featuring of Pool Magazine feels like a true blend of all of those elements with a bold artistic flair that's totally unexpected. This circular pool design, you got another barn dominium build with the perimeter overflow, the spa, the tanning ledge wrapping around, and that custom wood diving board at the other end. It's a really visually unique space. Can you walk us through the inspiration behind it, your design process, and some of the details that make this such a unique project?
Yeah, that one, I really don't like to say I have a favorite over one or the other. They've all got their space, but that one to me is just outside of my own personal pool, I just absolutely love that one. And it was a risky pool to do, and design. And actually, that was my second iteration of design. I started with an initial pool, and this client, they were building this home that the footers were already laid, and they had some of these big radius points that go around this garden area and kind of the lower north side there, and then they're positioned on a grass runway. And so they're on several hundred acres in a town called Lebanon, Tennessee. So I had this radius that we were working with, and the clients, having a runway there. I originally designed this to look like the front end of a DC-9, kind of that iconic plane. And this client wanted a high dive and a slack line, and they're in their late 60s and they're bringing these things up to me. And I'm like, my gosh. So we started with the original design, and they loved it until I told them it was going to be probably close to $1.5 million or $2 million. And so this was then my second iteration. And what it did is really just allow me to present something that was on the level. This is really a simplistic pool, even though it's got a really unique shape. That ellipse is just so captivating for that space. But at the end of the day, it's not way out of the ground. It's right there at the level of the runway. And so we had elevation to really deal with there. And on the other side of it, it was relatively flat, but I still felt like having that edge and having that still water there was ultra important. But just the way it rolled with these walls that they had that were already in place and kind of these circular radius points, even though the home is really dimensional and square and there's not a curve in the home or the pool house, I just felt really drawn to open up that space with a big, 2 inverse radius. And it turned out being pretty epic. Putting that diving board on that shelf there, I call those Baja shelves. I think that's a product of being a designer and builder in Arizona. I've done that several times, putting that diving board out in a shelf, and it makes that experience completely different. It's not just sticking on a typical fiberglass diving board on the side of a pool. It's just thought about differently. It's more intentional. And there's some ownership responsibility that goes along with those Mikkel tube diving boards, and they are absolutely beautiful. But it's one of those things like that your client needs to know that there's some ownership responsibility around it. But yeah, having that there in the middle of that just still water just looks pretty epic.
Yeah, the pool design is amazing. I mean, to me, it almost looks like an artist's palette, kind of like where the thumb hole would be where that spa is. It's really a striking design.
Thank you.
So there's some other things that I love about that project too. I mean, just the rest of the outdoor living landscape area. Did you do the rest of that too?
We laid out the patio space and kind of how that integrated and some of those step systems along with the fire pit area. They did actually bring in it was actually a commercial landscaper that came in and kind of did all the softscape area there. But having that lower fire pit area, that allowed me to bring in more Atelier Val's Todd Hart there that executes excellent work for us. And they wanted to flex and do something kind of cool on that. So they assisted me in that. But yeah, the whole composition and, through the driveway and all that, we tackled all of it.
What's that saying? I love it when a plan comes together, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, each of these projects tells a story, not just about your clients' lifestyles, but about your team's ability to bring together form, function, artistry. It's clear that Basin isn't just building pools. You guys are creating spaces that kind of elevate the entire home. Before we wrap, I'd like to rapid fire some stuff at you and maybe hear your thoughts on a couple things.
Yeah.
What do you think it's important about Basin that resonates so strongly with your clients who are looking for something truly custom, something beyond the ordinary?
I think it's the way that we, think about design. And I don't have to create ornate structures every time, but it's the timeless approach of that structure. So you have the design side, and then you have what we bring to the level of execution of construction. We are not perfect. We make mistakes, and we are there to make sure that we mitigate them and handle them, constant pressure testing our compaction, and all of these little steps that are so overlooked. And I feel like when a client chooses Basin, they understand that we are bringing a professionalism to the project that they just don't see.
Looking ahead, Nick, what kind of projects are you most excited to take on next? Are there any designs or ideas you've been itching to explore that we haven't seen from Basin yet?
You know, I tend to stick with a lot of geometric, but I really want to do a full perimeter overflow, completely, circular, which I know some other guys have done. But just that type of, where it blends kind of the modern design approach, but it doesn't feel too structured and too concrete, that, it feels more organic. And I think that's kind of where my design style is even going, with the use of materials like sukabumi that we talked about, heavy into grasses and just kind of more of these earth tones, getting away from like the typical, hey, we always do black interior, or we always do a light interior, the French gray color. And I think bringing in those earth tones to a house is so important, because it just gives you a sense of calm. And that's what I'm always striving for like you said earlier, coming from the cooking and all of that, I'm an intense person all day. And when I see my pool in that still water and those colors in the water, it calms me down and levels me as just a standard human.
Well, let me tell you, you've certainly found the right recipe for creating some spectacular designs here. I'm excited to show off these pool projects to the rest of the industry. I think you guys do some remarkable work, and I'm so glad you took the time out today to join us on the podcast. Really enjoyed our conversation today, Nick.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate it, and that's cool to be on your radar.
Well, that's a wrap for this episode of Pool Magazine Podcast. Thank you to everybody who's tuning in. If you enjoyed today's podcast, be sure to like, share, follow, and subscribe so you don't miss out on any future conversations with the visionaries that are shaping the pool and outdoor living industry. We'll see you next time on another episode of Pool Magazine Podcast.
This episode of Pool Magazine Podcast is proudly sponsored by Current Systems. The award-winning Riverflow pump is the industry-recognized preferred solution for creating a variety of exciting swim environments. From lazy rivers to sports pools, from residential to commercial, you'll find a Riverflow pump at the heart of many of today's most noteworthy pool projects. To learn more, visit us on the web at current-systems.com.